Who seeks enlightenment when the seeker itself becomes the primary obstacle? So this is this is kind of sort of Zen, Chan Buddhist kind of argument. One of my teachers, very long time Zen practitioner, very very incredible, capable practitioner, and we spent a lot of time working on arguments and ideas like this one. Um, when you're talking about something like Chan or Zen practice, the method is a little bit different by the time you get to this level of the discussion. And there's a really lovely talk. Let's see if I can find it. There's a really lovely talk that I saw once. Yes. And this, I will pop it in the chat. You can watch it later. His description of Mahamudra, which is basically like Geluk, is my main school, is sort of like Geluk Zen, you could say. His description of Mahamudra is not very good, but his description of Zen is really good. And what he says there is, look, actually, what most people consider sort of Zen or Chan practice, as we see it sort of globally and in particular in the West, is actually an advanced form of practice that you would do after you had already done a huge amount of study, a huge amount of practice, a huge amount of recitation, a huge amount of purification practice, right? Like after you had already done that sort of long, arduous trek from being an initiate monk to being a senior monk, then you would do your Chan, sort of what we would consider normal Chan practice. And this is where questions like this, who seeks enlightenment when the seeker itself becomes the primary obstacle? Questions like this become very important. Because what that question is pointing to, for example, I find it really, really helpful to look at someone like the first Panchen Lama's text on Mahamudra to get at a more something a little more substantial to talk about in response to that question. So what he said is, okay, stay with me for a second. Stay with me for a second. And I said, I will get to everyone's questions in the chat, but stay with me, okay? Very important. We were talking about before, you're doing meditation, for example, on vision. And through doing meditation on vision, you come to see that there is the seer, which is the visual sense, the visual consciousness, and what is seen. And there's no you in between. There's just seeing. And you can go watch the retreat that I just put on a month ago. And I mean, there were people that did that retreat that have never done that amount of meditation before, and they were already having these experiences. So it's not actually that difficult to do. This is something that erupts in your experience if you do these practices. It's obvious to you that there's no self in between. So you do this with vision. You do it with tactile sensation. You do it with smell. You do it with taste. You do it with sound. And now all of a sudden, the five external senses, it's obvious to you from experience there's no self there because there is simply the cognitive faculty that's knowing stuff and the stuff that is being known by that cognitive faculty, and there's no you in between, right? It's obvious from your experience. So you do that practice, okay? Then, when your external senses are less reactive because you've done all this work on them, then you turn the mind's attention inward. So this is more like a classic Mahamudra method that's a little bit, it has a few more stages than just sort of the just sitting method that became popular in Japan. Then you turn the mind inward, you become aware of mental content. And in a short period of time, as we said, instead you stop seeing mental content as you, and it separates again, and it's obvious that there's mental consciousness and there's the stuff that mental consciousness is aware of. And then at some point, because of the concentration that's being generated on consciousness, the five external sense gates turn off. and you're just in a spaceless, timeless awareness of awareness itself. Okay? So, in that condition, the first Panchen Lama recommends, okay, now, in that condition, who seeks enlightenment when the seeker itself becomes the primary obstacle? The seeker seemed to be there. There seemed to be a meditator there doing all of this meditation for some reason. He said, like a little fish in a pond that's completely still. Like a little fish in a pond that's completely still. Swim with introspection in consciousness and look for that meditator. So, in a state of, again, just to back up, in a state of awareness where the five external senses have turned off, your only awareness is of consciousness itself. And because of concentration, all of this mental chatter and blah, blah, blah has stopped. So, there's just awareness of awareness with the five external senses turned off. So, there's no sense of time and space. In that, or ordinary time and space, in that condition, like a little fish swimming through a completely still pond, move your introspection around and look for the meditator. Who's the one meditating? Because that one that you think is meditating, even in that extremely subtle state of concentration, is the primary obstacle. Or in the way that this question is framed in kind of a Chan or Zen sense, is the seeker itself, is the meditator itself. Look for that meditator himself or herself or itself. Look for the mind that is doing the meditating, and you won't be able to find it in the way you thought it was there. And when you don't find it in the way you thought it was there, hold with concentration. Hold that with concentration and fully absorb right? Fully absorb your awareness then on the absence of that kind of self within consciousness. And now you're meditating on selflessness. You're now meditating on emptiness. You're now meditating on the wisdom aspect of the path. Very powerful method, extremely powerful method.